Imagine working your whole life, saving every dime for your dream, only to wake up one morning and realize your parents drained your account for your brother's wedding. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Lena Hart, I'm 27, and I work as a nurse in Portland. I'm not rich, but I've always been careful with money. For years, I worked double shifts, skipped vacations, and cooked at home just to save for my dream, a small house of my own. By last fall, I had $48,000 in my savings. I was proud. It was the one thing that made all my long nights worth it. Then one morning, while checking my online banking, I froze. My account showed 42 cents. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I refreshed the page again and again, but the number didn't change. My stomach turned cold. I called the bank, shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone. The woman on the line said the withdrawal was made 2 days earlier. The account had a joint signature, my mother's. I felt like the ground vanished beneath me. I drove straight to my parents' house, still in my scrubs. My mom, Elaine, was in the kitchen, humming while arranging flowers. My dad, Martin, sat at the table reading the newspaper. My brother Cole was in the living room, laughing about some wedding plan on the phone. "Where's my money?" I asked. My voice didn't even sound like mine. Mom looked at me, surprised but calm. "Lena, sweetie, please don't make this a scene. We used it for something important." I stared at her. "You mean Cole's wedding?" Dad sighed like I was the one being unreasonable. "He's your brother. Family comes first." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You stole from me," I said quietly. "You took my house. My future." Mom folded her arms. "Don't be dramatic. You'll make that money back. Cole's wedding is once in a lifetime. You'll understand when you have a family of your own." Her words cut like glass. I'd worked for years to build that savings, skipped birthdays, holidays, even nights out with friends, and they'd just taken it, as if it were theirs to decide. Cole walked in, grinning. "Come on, Lena, it's not that big of a deal. You'll get over it. We're family." Something inside me broke. I looked at all of them, their calm, careless faces, and I realized I didn't belong in that room anymore. I wasn't part of their version of family. I walked to my old bedroom, grabbed the photo of me and my parents from the shelf, and stared at it. The girl in that picture still trusted them. She believed her family cared about her. I walked back to the door. "You'll never see another dollar from me," I said. My mom started to speak, but I cut her off. "You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." My eyes burned, but I didn't cry in front of them. I turned and left the house. The cold air outside hit my face, but it felt cleaner than the air I'd left behind. By the time I reached my car, the tears came anyway, hot, angry, unstoppable. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel. Through blurred vision, I whispered to myself, the words tasting bitter but strong. "Not anymore." The apartment smelled faintly of paint and coffee. It wasn't mine. It belonged to Tara, my best friend since high school. But she didn't hesitate to hand me the spare key when she saw my face that night. I dropped my bag near the couch and sat in silence. The city lights outside blinked through the thin curtains, but I couldn't feel anything. Not anger, not sadness, just a hollow, quiet pressing against my chest. Sleep didn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, memories surfaced like cruel reminders. I saw Cole at 16 getting a new car, while I was told we couldn't afford college tuition help. I remembered Mom gushing over his achievements, Dad bragging about him at dinner parties, while I cleared the table in the background. It had always been Cole first, then everyone else. I just never thought they'd take it this far. In the dim light of early morning, Tara sat across from me at the kitchen table, 2 mugs of coffee between us. "You can't just let them get away with this," she said softly. "That's theft, Lena. You should call the bank or the police." I stirred the coffee without drinking it. "They're still my parents," I said. My voice cracked halfway through. "I just can't bring myself to do that yet." She leaned forward, eyes full of sympathy. "They took everything you saved. That's not love, Lena." I didn't answer. I didn't know what love looked like anymore. Later that afternoon, I forced myself to go to the bank. The place felt colder than usual, sterile and bright. A woman named Clara led me to her desk, clicking through records on her computer. She frowned slightly as she scrolled. "The withdrawal was authorized with joint access," she said carefully. "Your mother signed for it. It's labeled as a family emergency." The words hit me like ice water. Family emergency. That's what she called it. Not theft, not deception, just a neat little excuse. I swallowed hard. "Can you print me a copy of that authorization form?" Clara nodded and handed me a sheet of paper. My mother's neat cursive filled the signature line. I'd seen it on permission slips, birthday cards, grocery lists, but never like this. I sat there for a long time, staring at the signature. It wasn't a mistake. She hadn't been tricked or confused. She'd walked into that bank, written her name, and drained my savings with a smile. Walking back outside, the wind hit my face, sharp and cold. The city moved around me, loud and uncaring, people rushing to buses, cars honking, life carrying on. But in my head, everything was still. I reached the corner of the street and stopped. The paper trembled in my hand, crumpling slightly at the edges. I tried to breathe, but it came out shaky. All the memories of her, the birthday calls, the gentle I love yous, the nights she told me she was proud, suddenly felt like scenes from someone else's life. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a choice. I looked down at the paper again. Her signature wavered as my hand shook harder. For the first time, I didn't see my mother's name. I saw the proof that I had been betrayed on purpose. And standing there on that cold sidewalk, clutching the paper that proved everything, I realized something heavy and final. It was never about family. It was about control. The sky was too perfect that day, clear, golden, and cruelly beautiful. I almost laughed at the irony. It was the morning of Cole's wedding, the event that had cost me everything. Everyone carried on as if nothing had happened. Photos were posted, laughter echoed, and my parents smiled in every picture I saw online. Their faces didn't show guilt, just pride. I told myself I wouldn't go. I repeated it all week, but when I opened my jewelry box and saw the silver necklace my mother had given me on my nursing school graduation, something inside me changed. I remembered how she'd said, "This is for my daughter who never gives up." The same hands that signed my savings away had fastened that clasp. I put it in my pocket and drove toward the vineyard uninvited. The place looked like a postcard. White tents, roses, waiters with trays of champagne. Strings of lights hung over long tables covered with crystal and gold. The kind of celebration you could only afford by stealing someone's dream. I stood at the edge of the crowd, blending into the noise. Music played, guests laughed, and Cole spun his new wife across the dance floor as if the world existed. My parents noticed me halfway through the toasts. My mother froze mid-laugh, wine glass in hand, while my father stiffened beside her. She forced a smile and waved me over, pretending to be delighted. "Lena, you made it. Isn't it beautiful?" Her voice was bright, fake, polished like everything around her. I reached into my pocket and held out the necklace. "I came to give this back." Her smile faltered. "Sweetheart, this isn't the time." My father's voice cut through hers, low and warning. "Don't make a scene, Lena. Today isn't about you." Something in me snapped. Maybe it was the champagne bubbles rising from every glass, the glittering laughter that didn't belong to me, or the sight of my brother raising a toast with money that should have been my future. My voice came out louder than I expected. "You're right, Dad. It's about how you two stole from your own daughter to pay for all this." The music stopped. Heads turned. The bride's smile froze as murmurs rippled through the crowd. My mother's face went pale, her hand trembling as she set down her glass. "Lena, please," she started, but I didn't let her finish. "Tell them, Mom. Tell everyone how you emptied my savings so your precious son could have fireworks and champagne." Cole's jaw tightened. "You're ruining everything," he hissed. "Everything was already ruined," I said. "You just dressed it up in flowers." No one spoke after that. The silence stretched thick and heavy. Even the band stopped pretending to tune their instruments. My father stepped forward, his voice sharp. "You've embarrassed this family enough." I laughed, but it came out broken. "You did that yourselves." I placed the necklace on the table beside the wedding cake, a small, shining reminder of what they'd taken from me, and turned to leave. I could feel everyone's eyes on my back, whispers chasing me as I walked toward the parking lot. At the doorway, I glanced once over my shoulder. My mother stood frozen, her mouth open, her perfect smile gone. For the first time, she didn't have a single word to say. That night felt endless. The silence in my apartment pressed down like a weight I couldn't push off. The words, the looks, the laughter from that wedding still echoed in my head. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces, proud, untouched, and sure they'd done nothing wrong. My body felt heavy, but my mind wouldn't stop spinning. I opened my laptop without thinking, searching for flights. I typed Malibu into the destination bar. It wasn't just a place to me. It was the picture I used to keep on my phone, the one I'd stare at after long shifts. Blue water, wide sky, calm. It was everything my life wasn't. When the flight options appeared, I picked the earliest one. One way. My hand hovered over the button for a moment before I clicked purchase. The confirmation email blinked on the screen, and I let out a sound I hadn't made in months. Not a laugh, not a sob, but something in between. I walked over to the window and looked out at the quiet street below. For the first time, I didn't feel trapped. The next morning, I listed my old car online. The same car I'd driven to work for years, the one that smelled faintly of coffee and hospital scrubs. A young couple came to see it by noon, counting bills carefully before handing them over. I watched them drive away and felt a strange calm settle in my chest. Letting go of that car felt like shedding a skin I'd outgrown. I packed only what I could fit in one suitcase. Clothes, a few books, my nursing ID, and the photo of me as a kid standing by the ocean. I didn't leave a note for anyone. Not my parents, not Cole. They had taken enough from me. I didn't owe them explanations. At the airport, I kept my head down, moving through the crowd like a ghost. The gate agent scanned my ticket, and I stepped onto the plane without looking back. My seat was by the window, and as the engines roared, I pressed my forehead against the cool glass. The city lights below shrank into tiny sparks, and the clouds swallowed everything. My chest tightened, part fear, part relief. I wasn't sure what waited for me on the other side. Maybe peace, maybe more loneliness, but at least it would be mine. No more pretending, no more begging to be understood. As the plane climbed higher, I felt the knot in my stomach slowly loosen. I closed my eyes and let the hum of the engines drown out every voice that had ever told me to put family first. For the first time, I was putting myself first. Hours later, the captain's voice came through the speakers, announcing our descent. When I opened my eyes, the world outside had changed. Sunlight poured through the window, painting everything gold. Below, the coastline stretched wide and endless, the Pacific glimmering like it was waiting just for me. The plane tilted slightly, and the ocean filled my view, deep blue, bright, alive. I felt the sting of tears, but this time they weren't from pain. They were from release. When the wheels touched down, I took a slow breath. California air, warm, light, unfamiliar. I stepped off the plane and into a life no one else could touch. The air smelled like salt and sunlight when I stepped out of the cab. The ocean stretched wide across the horizon, calm and endless, waves rolling in like they had nowhere else to be. The resort stood on a cliff above the beach, pale stone walls, glass balconies, and the steady hum of the sea below. It was quieter than I expected, peaceful in a way that felt almost unreal. I walked into the lobby, my suitcase rolling behind me, the last of my savings tucked into my wallet. The woman at the desk smiled warmly as she handed me a key card. "Room 203, Ocean View," she said. I thanked her, my voice barely above a whisper. Inside the room, the first thing I noticed was the sound, waves breaking against the rocks, rhythmic and steady. I opened the balcony door and stood there for a while, letting the breeze hit my face. It smelled like something clean and new. That evening, I went down to the small beach cafe near the resort. The place was nearly empty, just a few guests and the sound of cutlery clinking softly against plates. Behind the counter was a man arranging herbs over grilled fish. He looked up when I approached. "You new here?" he asked, wiping his hands on a towel. "Yeah," I said. "Just got in today." He smiled, easy and genuine. "Welcome to Malibu, then. I'm Noah." He didn't ask why I was there or what I was running from. He didn't look at me with pity or curiosity, just simple kindness. I sat at the counter, and he poured me a glass of water with lemon. "First night's always strange," he said. "Takes a bit to remember you're allowed to breathe." Something about the way he said it made my chest loosen. I nodded. "Yeah, breathing sounds nice." In the days that followed, I found a rhythm. Mornings by the ocean, afternoons walking barefoot along the sand, evenings at the cafe talking with Noah. He told stories about growing up near the coast, about learning to cook from his grandmother. I told him little pieces of my life, not everything, just enough to feel lighter. One night, we sat by a fire pit on the beach, the flames flickering between us. The stars were sharp and bright. "You ever feel like starting over's impossible?" I asked quietly. He poked at the fire with a stick. "Only until you do it once," he said. "After that, you realize it's just living, without permission." The words stayed with me long after I went back to my room. I sat on the bed, staring out at the moonlit waves. The world outside was still, but inside me something was shifting, slow, careful, real. I pulled out the small journal I always carried but rarely opened. The pages were mostly blank. Tonight, that felt right. I picked up my pen, the sound of the ocean soft in the background, and wrote the first words that came to me, the ones that felt truer than anything I'd said aloud in months. "I'm not broken. I'm just beginning." I closed the notebook, slid it onto the bedside table, and let the sound of the waves carry me into the quietest sleep I'd had in years. The first call came early one morning while I was watching the sun rise over the water. My phone buzzed across the table, my mother's name lighting up the screen. I let it ring until it went silent. A few minutes later, another call came, this time from Cole. I turned the phone face down and listened to the waves instead. By the end of the day, there were 10 missed calls and a handful of unread messages. When I finally opened them, my chest tightened. The first one was from my father. "You've embarrassed this family enough. Come home and apologize." Another followed from my mother. "We didn't mean to hurt you, sweetheart. We just wanted what was best for everyone." Each message was a twist of guilt, written like an apology but sounding more like blame. "You ruined your brother's wedding. People are still talking about your little scene. We love you, but you made things difficult for us." I read them all once, then deleted them without replying. The silence I gave them felt like the only control I had left. That evening, I went down to the cafe. The smell of roasted garlic and sea air drifted through the open door. Noah was there, plating food with quiet focus. When he saw me, he wiped his hands and joined me outside. "You look like you've been reading bad news," he said gently. I nodded. "They won't stop calling. I don't even know what to say if I did answer." He leaned back against the railing, eyes on the ocean. "Then don't say anything. Sometimes silence says more than words ever could." "I keep thinking I should defend myself," I murmured. "Tell them how wrong they were." He shrugged. "Maybe. But if they didn't listen when you were right in front of them, what makes you think they'll hear you through a phone?" His voice was calm, without judgment. The truth in it sank deep. "So what do I do instead?" "Right," he said simply. "Not for them to read for you. Put down what you'd say if they actually listened. Get it out of your head so it stops echoing." Later that night, I sat at the small desk in my room, the waves murmuring through the open balcony door. I took a blank sheet of paper and started to write. The words came slow at first, then faster, not angry, just tired. I wrote about the years I'd tried to earn their love, about how it felt to be treated like an afterthought, about the moment I realized peace mattered more than belonging. When I was done, I read it once, then folded it neatly. The paper was warm from my hands. I walked out onto the balcony, the sea breeze cool against my face. The night smelled of salt and jasmine. I held the letter up for a moment, letting the wind tug at its edges. Then I released it. The sheet fluttered, caught the air, and drifted out toward the dark water until it was just a pale shape against the horizon. As it disappeared, the ache in my chest eased a little. I turned back inside, leaving the phone on silent, and listened to the steady rhythm of the waves below. I was walking back from the beach when I saw him, standing by the resort entrance, sunglasses on, suit jacket too formal for the coast. "Cole." For a second, I thought I was imagining him, but then he called my name. My stomach tightened. He looked out of place among the tourists in sandals and sun hats, his expression sharp and restless. "So this is where you ran off to," he said, his tone carrying that same condescension I'd grown up here. "I didn't run," I replied. "I left." He gave a short laugh, the kind that didn't sound amused. "Mom and Dad are a mess. They barely leave the house. People still talk about what you did at the wedding. You really couldn't keep your mouth shut, could you?" I crossed my arms, feeling the sea breeze whip through my hair. "You mean the truth?" He stepped closer. "You humiliated them. You humiliated me. You think disappearing makes you a hero? They're struggling because of you, Lena. You ruined our family's image." The words rolled off me this time. A few months ago, they would have cut deep. Now they sounded hollow, rehearsed. If the image was more important than the truth, I said evenly, then maybe it deserved to be ruined. He scoffed, shaking his head. "You've changed. You used to care about us." "I still care," I said. "Just not enough to keep letting you use me." His jaw clenched. "They're your parents, Lena. They made mistakes, but they're still family. Family doesn't take what's yours and call it love," I said. "They took my savings, my trust, and when I finally stood up for myself, they called it betrayal." He folded his arms, trying to keep his control. "You think you're better than us now, living by the beach, playing victim?" I shook my head slowly. "No, I just learned to stop apologizing for existing." The silence between us stretched. The ocean roared faintly behind me, steady and indifferent. He stared at me, as if trying to find the sister he could still guilt into silence. "She wasn't there anymore. Mom cried for days after you left," he said finally. "Dad says he doesn't even recognize you. Maybe now he's seeing me for the first time," I said quietly. Something flickered across his face, frustration, maybe confusion. "You really don't plan to come home?" "This is home now." His composure cracked. "You're unbelievable," he snapped. "All this time, we've been trying to fix what you broke, and you don't even care. You're not family anymore." He turned, starting back toward the parking lot, anger stiff in every movement. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him, trapped in the same lie I'd finally escaped. As he reached the door, I spoke softly, just loud enough for him to hear over the wind. "Exactly." He froze, shoulders tense, but didn't turn around. A moment later, he walked away. I stood there watching until his figure disappeared beyond the palm. Then I faced the sea again, the waves glittering under the afternoon sun. For the first time, the sound didn't remind me of running away. It sounded like staying free. The days after Cole's visit passed quietly. The air felt lighter, like a door had closed behind me for good. One morning, while walking through town, I stopped in front of a wellness clinic tucked between a coffee shop and a surf store. A small sign in the window read, "Hiring, medical staff needed." Something inside me stirred. I stepped in before I could overthink it. The place smelled of lavender and ocean salt. A woman at the front desk smiled when I introduced myself. "We've been looking for someone with nursing experience," she said after glancing at my resume. "You're exactly what we need." 2 days later, I started. The clinic treated locals and travelers, people trying to rest, recover, or just breathe. I found comfort in the quiet rhythm of caring for strangers who didn't ask about my past. My hands remembered what they were good at, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was running from anything. With my first paycheck, I signed a lease for a small apartment on a hill above the beach. The walls were white and bare, the kind of empty that begged to be filled. Each morning I woke to the sound of waves hitting the rocks, sunlight spilling through open windows. I made coffee, stood barefoot on the balcony, and watched the sea stretch out endlessly ahead. Independence no longer felt like loneliness. It felt like peace. On a quiet Sunday, I walked through a local art market and stopped at a stall selling paints and brushes. The sight of color jars lined up in neat rows pulled something old out of me. I hadn't painted since college, since before work, money, and family took up every corner of my life. I bought a small set and a canvas, unsure if I'd even use them. That night, I spread the supplies across the floor of my living room. The brush felt strange in my hand at first, but soon the motion came naturally, smooth, steady, free. I painted the ocean, the cliffs, the warm glow of evening light. The result wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. It was mine. A few weeks later, I went to the bank, the same branch that had once handed my savings over without question. I walked to the counter and said, "I'd like to close this account." The clerk nodded and began typing. When she handed me the paperwork, I signed my name with a calm I hadn't felt in years. Then I opened a new account, one that existed under only my name. No shared access, no risk of anyone touching what was mine. As I walked out, I felt a small thrill of ownership, not over money, but over my life. That evening, I brought my painting onto the balcony and leaned it against the railing. The sun dipped low, turning the ocean gold and pink. The breeze lifted strands of my hair, warm and soft. I stood there for a long time, just breathing, the world around me quiet except for the waves. As the last bit of light slipped beneath the horizon, a faint smile found its way to my face. Not forced, not fleeting. Real. It felt like the beginning of something I'd been waiting for all along. The months slipped by quietly, the kind of time that moves without noise. The clinic had become my routine, the ocean my companion. One afternoon, while leaving work, I saw a message from Mrs. Doyle, our old neighbor back in Portland. I hadn't spoken to her since I left, but her name made me pause. Her voice on the other end was soft, cautious. "I thought you should know," she said. "Your parents are having a rough time. Your father's business isn't doing well. And Cole, well, his marriage isn't looking good either." I leaned against a railing, the sound of waves in the distance. "Are they all right?" I asked, though I wasn't sure why. "They're surviving," she said. "But they keep saying everything went downhill after you left." I thanked her and hung up. For a long moment, I just stood there, staring out at the water. The news didn't spark satisfaction, only a strange, distant sadness. I pitied them, but there was no part of me that wanted to fix what they'd broken. Some things crumble because they're built on lies, and trying to rebuild them only repeats the same mistakes. A week later, an email arrived from my mother. The subject line read, "Let's start over." The message was long, full of familiar words. Family, forgiveness, love, misunderstanding. She ended it with, "We all said things we didn't mean. Let's meet and talk just once." I stared at the screen for a while, then typed back, "Okay." One meeting. We chose a small cafe halfway between the airport and the city. When I walked in, I spotted them immediately, both thinner, older somehow. My father's suit looked worn. My mother's hands fidgeted with her napkin. Cole wasn't there. "Lena," my mother said, her voice fragile. "You look good." I sat down quietly. "So do you." My father cleared his throat. "We didn't call you here to fight. We just want our family back. We've lost so much already." I watched them carefully. They looked tired, but their words still felt rehearsed. "You mean you lost control?" I said. "There's a difference." My mother blinked, tears gathering in her eyes. "We made mistakes. We thought we were helping. We just wanted everyone to be happy." I almost believed her. For a second, I saw flashes of my childhood, her brushing my hair, Dad cheering at school plays, all the small things that used to feel like love. But they'd taught me the hardest lesson. Love without respect is just control dressed up as care. My father leaned forward. "Can't we move past this? We're still your parents." I shook my head slowly. "You'll always be my parents. But that doesn't mean I have to keep being your daughter in the way you expect." The silence stretched between us. My mother reached for my hand, but I pulled it back gently. "I'm not here to punish you," I said. "I just came to tell you I'm done carrying what you did." Her lips trembled. "You really won't come home?" I stood, taking my purse from the chair. "Home isn't a place that hurts you every time you walk in." They both watched me, speechless. I met their eyes one last time, not angry anymore, just finished. "You taught me what love shouldn't feel like," I said quietly. Then I turned and walked out into the late afternoon light, leaving their voices behind with the sound of the door closing. The morning of my 20th birthday began with the sound of waves brushing against the shore and sunlight spilling through the curtain. The air smelled of sea salt and something sweet drifting up from the kitchen below. I could hear laughter, Tara's voice, then Noah's, low and steady. For the first time in years, my birthday didn't feel heavy. It felt like waking up inside my own life. When I stepped onto the balcony, a small group of friends waited near the patio table, people I'd met through the clinic and around town. There was music playing softly from someone's phone, the kind of easy rhythm that matched the ocean. A bouquet of blue and white flowers rested in the center, petals bright against the sun. Noah stood beside it, holding a small cake topped with one candle. "Happy birthday, Lena," he said with that quiet smile of his. Tara laughed. He made it himself. Wouldn't let anyone else touch the frosting. I laughed too, the sound feeling natural, effortless. "You're serious?" Noah shrugged. "You only turned 28 once. Figured it should taste good." When everyone sang, I didn't wish for anything. I just looked around at their faces, the sea behind them, the life I'd built from what was left. There was peace here, not loud or dramatic, just steady. The kind that comes when you stop asking for things that were never meant to be given. After the cake was cut and the laughter softened, Noah handed me a small envelope. Inside was a key attached to a wooden charm shaped like a seashell. "What's this?" I asked. He nodded toward the cliff path. "Go see for yourself." We walked together down the narrow trail that led past the resort toward a row of cottages overlooking the water. The last one sat apart from the rest, small, white walls, a blue door, windows that caught the afternoon light. A for sale sign leaned against the porch railing. "It's perfect," I whispered. Noah smiled. "I heard you mention once that you wanted a place of your own here. You should have it." Later that week, I signed the papers myself. A modest beach house, nothing grand, but it felt like a promise kept. The dream I thought had been stolen now standing in front of me, real and solid. I spent the first evening sitting on the porch steps, watching the tide roll in and the horizon fade from gold to blue. As night settled, I thought about everything that had brought me here, the betrayal, the anger, the long silence that followed. None of it felt sharp anymore. The revenge I once imagined didn't come from seeing anyone suffer. It came from standing here, whole and free. The ocean wind brushed my hair as I leaned back against the railing. Behind me, laughter from my new friends drifted through the air. Inside, the cake from earlier sat half-eaten on the table, and my suitcase rested by the door of a home that was finally mine. I took a deep breath, letting the salt and the calm fill me. My voice came out in a quiet whisper meant only for myself. They took my savings, but they couldn't take my spirit. And that was my real revenge. Do you think I made the right choice by walking away from my family, or should I have given them another chance? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more stories like this.